Hi, my name is Hazel Mphande, aka Hazy Jane. I am an artist and photographer from Pretoria. I am a portrait photographer currently, but I would describe myself more of an abstract photographer as well, because I do a lot of layering in my work. I've always been a really experimental type of person, especially with using my hands. I remember when I was a child, I would rearrange the family photos. Like, I would be drawn to the black and white images and just would want to cut them up and collage them and then paint over them. So I've always really been interested in just like making something new of something already found. So I was always drawn to remaking images or making my version of what I think images should be. When I was also a kid, I would take my dad's cell phone and photograph families around my neighborhood, my own family, and just make things look very abstract. So taking pictures of, I don't know, my sisters, and then mash the images with pictures of my dad and everything else that I would find. So I've always been curious about taking images in a non-traditional way. For the longest time, I remember I wanted to be a black and white photographer. That's all I said since I was a child. Whether it was street photography, music photography, landscapes as well, portraits a lot. I've always been drawn to it. I think I really love that aesthetic, and I really am into juxtaposition as well. So I also love contrast as well. Photography and art making is my form of therapy. For the longest time, I've struggled with communicating, but I communicate really well, especially about my feelings using my art. And because of that, I really hold that, like, it's very precious to me. I don't want to put pressure on myself to make the art for money. That's never the ultimate goal. It's nice if you do, obviously, because we have to eat. But like, for me, I've always made sure that I have that aside for my own personal outlet. I mean, with this series, initially it was birthed during the pandemic. At the time, I hadn't photographed in a long time. You know, I was going through my own struggles mentally, and then the pandemic happened. But during that time, I was doing a lot of journaling and writing and reading and all of that, and I hadn't picked up the camera for a while. And then I decided to point the camera at me and do another version of self-examining, self-studying, like, you know, because I would read stuff that I would write about me. And then I was like, why don't I just photograph myself? Sometimes you just don't want to write, you know? And then I started to slowly build on that, and I found myself more comfortable taking pictures. And so these self-portraits just grew and grew and grew. And after taking these pictures, I would look at them, assess them, edit them, and then reflect back on that by journaling. So it was like a whole cycle of just like journaling, reading, and then writing, and then photographing, and then doing that over and over. And also it changed and shifted the way I look at the ideas I have around death and how I feel about it. I started to think about how in my family we don't really speak about that. You know, it's a topic people avoid, but I think during that time we were forced to have discussions about that as well. So I decided to explore my thoughts around it, and then I found it quite interesting how I looked at death almost like as a beautiful and natural thing that has to happen, that we have no control over, and not seeing it from a dire point of view, which actually helped me as well. And yeah, I mean, I even started to look at nature a lot as like a visual motif for the whole idea of what death is. It then moved into me talking about memories, and then I started to think about how I remember things as well, and I started to investigate my own memories. Like, why do I forget things, or why have I forgotten some memories? And then I started to learn that repressed trauma does affect our memory, And then I started to look into that, which is where I am right now. Just make the art, man. Like, make the art, make the work. Feel free to express yourself however way. Because I feel like even if people don't understand you now, it will mean a lot to somebody else in the future. I'm so grateful for artists like Francesca Woodman and Yosanele Moholi just making work that they stood by and continued regardless of whatever.